But with that, let's move on to our quarterfinal predictions. We are recording before Christmas, so these lines definitely can, and in all likelihood, probably will move between now and New Year's Eve / New Year's Day. It is worth noting that every team with a first round bye last year lost in the quarterfinals. So, not saying history will repeat itself, but just worth putting it out there that that is what happened last year. Let's start things off with the New Year's Eve game. Number 2 Ohio State versus number 10 Miami in the Cotton Bowl. The Buckeyes are 9.5-point favorites with an over/under of 42.5 points. Who gets it done, Braden?
Yeah, before jumping into the Buckeyes Miami game, I want to note I think there's a big difference between this year's first round buys and last year's. Last year you had Boise State, who was I think the 9 seed, getting a bye. They were the 4 seed in the playoff. And I'm blanking on who ended up being the 3 seed in last year. I think it was somebody out of the Big 12, right?
It's
That was
killing me.
Arizona
I
State.
remember.
Arizona State.
Yeah. No, it was Boise State. Boise State was 3. Arizona State was 4.
Okay. So either way, for those teams, you had 1 seed Oregon getting just a terrible matchup against an elite Ohio State team that somehow lost to Michigan. You had Georgia as the 2 seed, missing their starting quarterback in Carson Beck. And then you had teams that were actually lower ranked with the buys in the 3 and 4 slots. This year, I think the top 4 are significantly better. So starting off with my Ohio State versus Miami prediction, the Canes defense is obviously going to have to show up big in this one. I don't think they can contain Julian Sayin and Bo Jackson like they did with Marcel Reed and Ruben Owens. Sayin averages over 250 passing yards per game. Jackson has 95 all-purpose yards per game. And on top of those guys, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are a massive step up from Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion at the wide receiver position. Those A&M guys are great. These Ohio State guys are unguardable. The Buckeye offense didn't look great against Indiana, had just 10 points and 322 yards of offense, but I think they'll use the 2 weeks off to bounce back to normal form. Meanwhile, Miami's offense has been inconsistent at times this year. Carson Beck, in Miami's 2 losses, has combined to throw 7 interceptions. And the Ohio State defense leads the country in points per game, yards per game, and yards per play allowed. They're also in the top 10 in 3rd and 4th down conversions allowed and red zone defense. If the Buckeye defense can shut down Mark Fletcher and Malachi Toney, like I think they will, Carson Beck is going to have to turn into Superman. I don't see that being the case. So with that being said, I think Ohio State rolls in this one. I will take the Buckeyes by a final score of 41-14.
That would be a good old-fashioned ass whooping. But yeah, the last time that Ohio State lost a game before the playoffs, very bad things happened to those they played. And as good as Miami has looked recently, I just don't think they can keep up with the Buckeyes. They struggled with the A&M defense, I should say. And as you mentioned, Ohio State is on a whole nother level. They are giving up 8.2 points per game over the course of the season. That is comfortably number 1. I think they're going to be very well rested. I think this is going to be a pretty low scoring affair, and I think that plays into the Buckeyes' strengths. I think they win and cover. I'll take the under as well slightly. I will say 24-14 in favor of Ohio State in a game that really never is truly that close, even though it's only a 10-point loss. New Year's Day at 11 Central Time, first game of the day. Number 4 Texas Tech versus number 4 Oregon. In the Orange Bowl, Oregon is a 1.5-point favorite despite being the lower seed with an over-under of 52.5 points, Braden.
I think this is easily the best game of the quarterfinal round. Texas Tech has the 3rd best scoring offense and the 2nd best scoring defense in the country. They're top 10 in both yards per game and yards per game allowed. They're actually 2nd in yards per game allowed. They're also 2nd in the country in turnover margin and the nation's leader in takeaways, in large part because of Heisman finalist snub Jacob Rodriguez. Oregon is 9th in both scoring offense and scoring defense. I think the quarterback matchup in this one is great as well. Baron Morton and Dante Moore have both had really great seasons. Morton did miss a little bit of time with injury, but he's been right back into form since he's returned to the lineup. I don't know who's going to win this game or how many points will be scored, but I can guarantee that this game ends within 1 possession. So with that being said, give me the Red Raiders in this one by a final score of 27-24. So the under will hit by a couple of points.
And tying right in with that, if we had a best bet of the week like we did for the NFL, the under would be my pick for that. I think these are 2 very, very good defenses. Oregon has one of the best passing defenses in the country. which is Texas Tech's strength offensively. So I see a lower scoring game than the over under would suggest. Texas Tech has not played a team like Oregon all year. They've smoked BYU twice, but Oregon, I think, is a far better team, quite frankly. They're also healthier than they've been in a while. They got wide receivers DeCorian Moore and Gary Bryant Jr. back last week for James Madison. I see a pretty low scoring back and forth type of game. I've been a huge Texas Tech believer all year, but I predicted Oregon would win this matchup in a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to stick to it. I think the Ducks win. I think the Ducks cover the 1.5, and I will take the under, like I said, in a 24-20 victory for Oregon. And then the next game on New Year's Day at 3 o'clock Central Time, number 1 Indiana versus number 9 Alabama in the Rose Bowl. Indiana is a 7-point favorite with a 48.5 point over under. Who do you like here, Braden?
I see this one playing out a lot how you see Miami and Ohio State playing out. Alabama just cannot run the football, and I think that's going to be their kryptonite in this one as well. Daniel Hill was their leading rusher against Oklahoma, had just 43 yards, did have a big explosive run, but beyond that, I mean, the Tide just could do absolutely nothing running the football. Indiana's third in the nation in rushing defense, surrendering just 80.8 yards per game on the ground. Alabama having to go one-dimensional against a great Indiana secondary led by D'Angelo Pons is going to be almost impossible for them to overcome. I'm not a huge, Ty Simpson believer either. He looked good in the second half against Oklahoma for sure, but he's been far too inconsistent this season for me to believe that was a turning point. Since the calendar flipped to November, in 6 games, he has multiple passing touchdowns in just 2 of them, has 4 total interceptions, has completed fewer than 63% of his passes in 4 of those last 6 games, and in 4 of his last 5 games, he's taken at least 3 sacks. The first round game was definitely a step in the right direction, but I need to see more from Ty Simpson before I am bought back in. I think the bye week might hurt Indiana a little bit from a rush standpoint, but they just look so dominant on both sides of the ball right now. So I think this game is going to be similar to how you see Miami Ohio State playing out, where it's a 2-possession game. Alabama's within striking distance, but never really, I would say, super competitive. So I will go with the final score of Indiana 31, Alabama 17.
This is possibly the biggest game in the history of Indiana Hoosiers football. They're coming off a Big Ten championship. Fernando Mendoza just won the Heisman, and now they play the most historic football program in college football at the most historic venue in college football. I think the Oklahoma win gave Alabama some momentum. They heard for weeks how bad they were, how they didn't deserve to be in the college football playoff to begin with. And to some extent, I think that plays into, this as well. Everybody's saying how great Indiana is, how Alabama didn't deserve to win that game, how they're still frauds. And they looked the part of that for the first 20 minutes of that game. But then they outscored Oklahoma 34-7 over the last 40 minutes. As good, though, as the Oklahoma defense is, Indiana's is better. You mentioned they're third in the country in run defense. They're also third in the country, or top 3 in the country, I should say, in all of opponent third down conversion, first downs allowed, which they were leading the country in with 156 over the entire season. That is roughly, I don't know the math off the top of my head, I guess, but that's roughly just over 10. Yeah, 12 first downs per game allowed over the course of the season. They're top 3 in turnover margin, points per game allowed as well. They're 4th in the country in total yards allowed per game. Safe to say that this is the best defense Alabama has seen all year. So I expect another low-scoring game with the strength of Alabama being their defense right now. I will take Indiana to win. I do think Alabama will cover the 7 points, and I'll take the under as well. I will say 23-17 in favor of the Hoosiers. And then the final game of the quarterfinal round, number 3 Georgia versus number 6 Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. Georgia is a 6.5 point favorite with a 55.5 point over under. Who do you like here?
Yeah, if I had a best bet of the week, it would be Georgia to cover this spread. Since losing to Alabama, they've looked unstoppable. The Dogs are 9-0. They've won 6 games by multiple scores, and they've beaten 4 ranked teams. In that time frame, they were outgaining their opponents 391 to 267 per game. Only one team has scored more than 21 points against them, and that team was Ole Miss, in which Georgia outscored Ole Miss 17-0 to overcome a 9-point deficit in the fourth quarter. In that ballgame, the Dogs outgained the Rebels 510 to 351, did not punt the football once. Gunnar Stockton was phenomenal, had 289 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, just 5 incompletions, and also had 59 yards rushing and another touchdown. Trinidad Chambliss played great in that game as well, had 305 yards and 3 touchdowns in total. But the Rebels are at a clear talent disadvantage in this one. I think he and Quan Lacey will have a solid performance, but I think the Georgia offense is going to be too much for the Ole Miss defense. So with that being said, I will take Georgia by a score of 40-28 to win and cover, and I will take the over as well.
And yeah, Georgia was both of our national champions when we made our picks for the entire bracket a few weeks ago. Even after that Tulane game, I still think Georgia takes care of business pretty comfortably. They're playing as well as maybe any team in the country right now, including Ohio State and Indiana. It is hard to beat a team twice, but Georgia, I don't think, was at their best when they won that first time. They are now, and Ole Miss does not have their head coach from that game. So I think the Dogs win. I will say they cover the 6.5 as well. And I got to pick the over in one of these games, so I'll do it in this one. I will say Georgia 34, Ole Miss 27 as the final score.